Hi, good to see you again. Welcome to Block 1, Constructing, Measuring, and Using Geometric Notation, Lesson 5. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to classify angles using words like acute, obtuse, reflex, and right angles. In today's lesson, you're going to learn how to measure angles up to 180 degrees. Remember to like the video, share the video with those you think can benefit, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell so that when new videos are released, you will be notified. By doing so, you help us grow our mission to provide a platform where children can have high quality maths education regardless of their economic situation. Thank you. Before we start, I would like you to pause the video and do these retrieval practice questions in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. The first one, you were asked, what piece of equipment do we use to measure angles? It's a protractor. What is the sum of interior angles in a triangle? It is 180 degrees. What is the sum of the interior angles in a quadrilateral? It is 360 degrees. Quadrilaterals have 4 sides. I hope you remember that. Well, here is a protractor. At the retrieval practice, you noticed we used the word protractor. Here is what it looks like. Notice that how we read protractors, we read the numbers and we use the degree sign. So for a number like this, we would say it is 50 degrees. We also have on the protractor 2 scales. We have the outside scale, which is read clockwise, and we have the inside scale, which is read anti-clockwise. Okay, let's make some use of the protractor. So if we're asked to measure the size of this angle, the first thing we do is we make sure that the crosshairs, so the crosshairs is this point here, okay, the crosshairs line up with the vertex, this is the vertex of the angle you want to measure. So we make sure it lines up like that. And then you can see that the 0 of the outside scale lines up with the line, okay, with one of the lines of the angle we want to measure. Now we can simply just read the number. We can see that it is 50 degrees. But we can also see that there is another number, 130 degrees. So which one do we choose? Well, there are several reasons. In fact, there are 1 or 2 reasons for us to choose the number 50 degrees. First, we can see that it is acute. Next, we can also see that the outside scale lines up with the 0. Okay, the outside scale 0 lines up with the line. So we have to read the number that corresponds with that. So we cannot choose 130 because 130 would make it an obtuse angle. And we can see it's not obtuse, it's acute. What about this one? Here, a protractor has been positioned to measure this angle. What do you think? Well, the answer won't be right. Why? I'm sure you have seen that it does not line up the crosshair. You can see the crosshair of the protractor right here. It doesn't line up with the vertex of the angle. So what we need to do to measure is we need to line it properly. Now we can measure the angle correctly. So we can see that the zero of the outside scale lines up with one of the line segments of the angle we want to measure. And we can simply just read the outside scale to the other line, which lines up with the angle of measure on the protractor. And that gives us 138 degrees. Okay, what about this one? We want to measure this angle, but it's a bit challenging because this line does not extend right through to the protractor scale so that we can read it easily. In that case, what you do is you take your protractor off and you extend the line. There's nothing wrong with that. Your angle would still be correct. So you extend the lines. Now you can measure your angle. You position your protractor. The crosshairs has to line up with the vertex of the angle you want to measure. And one of the line segments of the angle you want to measure must match with the zero line of the protractor, either using your outside scale or the inside scale. In this case, we're using the inside scale. Now, when we read that, we'll see that our answer should be 57 degrees. Okay, so you see 50 there, 55, and then it's on 57 degrees. It's now time for you to practice what you've learned. Pause the video and answer question 1 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 1, here are the answers. So here you will simply ask, what is the size of the angle marked in each diagram? So the angles are 70 degrees, 125 degrees, respectively. Here is part B, and you can see the angles there. Notice how these are measured. So it doesn't matter the orientation of the angle you want to measure. The process is the same. Using the right process would give you the correct angle of measure. Okay, pause the video and answer question 2 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 2, here is the answer. So here you were asked, Nisha measures this angle. She says the angle marked is 30 degrees. How do you know? Just by looking at the angle that it is not 30 degrees. We know why. It is an obtuse angle. Okay? What mistake do you think Nija has made? So probably Nija has read the wrong number on the protractor. So remember, in your protractor, you have the outside scale, which runs from 0 clockwise to 180 degrees. And then you have the inside scale, which runs anti-clockwise. So she would have read the inside scale instead of the outside scale. All right, pause the video and answer question 3 in 1 minute. You can take longer, you don't have to follow my timing. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 3, here are the answers. So here, Amir and Rosie each draw an angle. Amir says, my angle is greater than yours. And then Rosie says, that's not correct, our angles are the same. And then for A, measure to show that Rosie is correct. What's the size of both angles? It's 50 degrees. So why do you think Amir thought his angle was greater than Rosie? It's because his line segments are larger or longer. Okay, his line segments were longer, but the angles are the same. So whenever I remember from our examples in the lesson, whenever we have angles that are shown where the line segments are short, we can actually extend them as long as we want to make sure we do our measurements correctly. Pause video and answer question 4 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 4, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So here, you're simply using protractors to measure the angles. So by now, you would have had a really good practice at knowing how to use a protractor. Okay. So if you've not been practicing, you can pause the video, you can go back to the start of the video and then get a protractor and really get good practice knowing how to use the protractor. Okay, let's do some new learning for the second part of the lesson. So if you're asked to measure the size of the angle DBC, how would you go about it? All right, so here we have a diagram and we are required to measure the size of angle DBC. Well, the approach is the same. We'll take a protractor. We'll make sure, remember how we label angles. The middle letter tells us the position of the angle, and it also gives us an idea of what line segments are holding the angle, bounding the angle. So in this case, the line segments are DB and CB. Okay. Now, you position the protractor so that it's at 0 on one of the line segments, and we read the other angle. So here we can see that is 49 degrees. But how would we answer these other questions? Well, it's the same approach. We want to measure the size of angle BCD. So again, we position the protractor so that the 0 line lines up with one of the line segments, the position of the angle, and the vertex is at the crosshairs. Remember our technique. And then we simply read our angle. In this case, the angle is 65 degrees. But how do we find angle DAB? Well, remember that this is a quadrilateral. And what do you think is the sum of the angles in a quadrilateral? Well, the sum of the angles is 360 degrees. So here we know this is a right angle, is 90 degrees. We already know that is 49. And we know that is 65. So to get our answer, we'll have to subtract these angles from 360 degrees because this is the only angle we do not know. And then we'll get 113 degrees. It's now time for you to pause the video and answer the questions that follow for you to get a really good practice. So pause the video and answer question 5 in 1 minute. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 5, here are the answers. So here you're asked, measure each of the angles in this triangle and label them on the diagram. Okay, so if you had the opportunity of maybe screenshotting this and printing it out, then you can have a really good practice. Or if you've had the opportunity to buy the worksheet from White Rose Education, then you can have the opportunity to practice this really well. So these are the angles that have been measured, and then you can check that they all add up to 180 degrees. Pause the video and answer question 6 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 6, here are the answers. So here you were asked to measure the angles in the diagram. So by now, this gives you the opportunity to practice, to know how to position your protractor, to make sure that the crosshair lines up with the position of the angle, the vertex of the angle you want to measure, and one of the line segments line up with the 0 line of the protractor, and then making sure you read the correct scale. So these are the angles. Okay. Pause the video and answer question 7 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 7, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So here you were asked that Captain Jones is facing the tree. So facing the tree, here is Captain Jones. He turns clockwise to face the pirate ship. Turns clockwise to face the pirate ship. That's the pirate ship. What angle does he turn through? Okay, so this is something you're going to have to work at and then measure. So the way we do this is whenever you have a question like that, you indicate your north line. Okay, so this is Captain Jones. You indicate that, yeah, he's facing the tree, so that's the north. And then he turns clockwise to face the pirate ship. So you're going to draw an angle like that. And then the way you do it is you take a ruler and join, before you even draw that angle, you take a ruler and join a very straight line and join that point where Captain Jones is to the pirate ship. And then once you've done that, you can then measure, use your protractor to measure this angle that I have just drawn here. Okay, so making sure that the crosshair of the protractor lines up with this vertex point here, the cross where Captain Jones is, and then making sure that the zero line either lines up with this north line or it lines up with that line, and then you can either measure with the inside scale or the outside scale. Next, Captain Jones then turns clockwise to face the treasure chest. What angle has he turned through? That's what they're asking you now. All right, so he turns clockwise to face the treasure chest. So clockwise, so making sure you use a line, a straight line to join that. Okay. And then you can measure using your protractor. You can measure that angle. Okay. So you can remember when we do this, it's important you use the correct direction. So Captain Jones then turns clockwise to face the treasure chest. So from here, remember your angle you're going to be measuring is from here to here. Okay. So remember, it's not from, because he was already facing the pirate ship. So the angle you're measuring is from the pirate ship to the treasure chest. Okay. So, and that angle will be 134 degrees. So remember, you line the protractor crosshairs with this point, and then you make sure the zero line of the protractor either lines up with this line or that line, and then you read the scale from the zero line of the protractor, either using the outside scale or the inside scale of the protractor. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. So well done for sticking around, for learning how to measure angles up to 180 degrees. Until next time, take really good care of yourself, and bye-bye.